Awesome. So hello guys, I hope you guys are all well and having a fantastic and productive week. Tonight, Middlesex University Product Design Engineering and Design Engineering are really excited to host our 17th talk in the 2020-2021 annual guest lecture series. So these guest lectures, they run throughout the academic year on Thursday evenings, and we bring together a really vibrant mix of speakers from across like the full spectrum of design and engineering. Tonight, we're super excited to host Win Griffiths, who many of you know, especially if you guys are studying or have studied BA, BSc or BEng product design or product design engineering. Many of you have been taught by Win at Middlesex, and he's been here for around 17 years or so now, teaching and leading across programs in product design and product design engineering as a senior lecturer, and previously as a program leader for over 15 years as well. And Win's background is really interesting and rich in the design discipline. Like a few of his previous roles and positions include previously teaching at Bournemouth University. He was a group member at the Design Ventura Steering Committee, a mentor at the Design Council, a former associate director at the Red Loop Middlesex University Design and Innovation Centre as well, with our other colleagues and your tutors, Dr. Andy Bardale and Dr. Kate Hurd. Win is also the co-founder and co-director of SMASHfestUK, which has been running from 2013 until now, a multi-award winning initiative with lots of prestigious partners and collaborators. And it's all about public engagement, co-design, and collaborative creativity with communities that are underrepresented in the STEM subjects and art, education, and careers. So Win also leads a multi-partner collaborative research project, Space Plague, as the principal investigator. This is funded by the Science and Technology Facilities Council, the Nucleus Award. And he's run 3 phases of this as well. And I'm sure Win will talk to you guys about this. So stacks of experience and expertise across the industrial design and design engineering, like through participatory design, speculative design. And in this talk, Win's going to reflect on what he's learned across those experiences and how they inform current possibilities, opportunities, and imperatives for designers and engineers. And without any further ado, with a talk titled What Is? So Design and Engineering Possibilities, Opportunities, and Imperatives. Win, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ahmed. That's such a great and detailed intro. I don't need to say anything now. I think you covered everything there. That was brilliant. So thank you, everybody, for coming. That was great. Any questions? No, apologies, folks, first of all, to the final years. This will be the second time they've had to sit and listen to me talk today, which nobody should have to do. And apologies to the rest of you for the first time of having to sit and listen to me talk. Nice to be here. This is very strange in this this circumstance, having before Ahmed run the guest lecture series for many years, and now being on the other end of it and not in a lecture theatre is quite strange, but that'd be interesting. Okay, that's me. That's the talk. That's the background. What is? That's the key thing here. The question. There's lots of pondering as to lots of questions that are going to arise as I speak. So starting point is, who am I? Why am I here? Ahmed answered that well for me. So that, you know, that saves a little time on this slide. But I'm here to tell a story. Everything's story when it comes down to it. But this is a story that leads in 2 directions. It's got what actually happened, and then it's got reflection upon what actually happened. And there's something to bear in mind as I go through my scrapbook of actual experiences is like real life. It's messy. And often you don't realize what you were learning, what you were doing until you look back on it. And then you reflect. And it's always really important to reflect and try to understand what you've been through, what you've been doing, what you've learned, and how to apply it to the next cycle in your life. And that's a much clearer thing. You've got to be careful that, you know, you reinvent your own history when you reflect as well, and you filter out aspects and you create meaning that perhaps wasn't there at the time. But that's what we are as this kind of organic machine. We build this meaning in and of ourselves. So with that in mind, you know, I'll note that there's the narrator of this story is mostly trustworthy, but is human in terms of its recollections, and the narrator will also point out that he again apologizes for some of the awful hairstyles you're going to encounter over the next few slides. But before we begin that, as with any good story, a bit of a foreword to set up what we're talking about. So, design and engineering, possibilities, opportunities, and imperatives. Definition of design and engineering is a wonderful and ongoing discussion. You'll find a wide range of definitions. Ones we've always used on the course are quite dry and particular. Design is conscious and intuitive effort to impose meaningful order. Engineering is the creative application of scientific principles to design or develop structures, machines, apparatus, and manufacturing processes. Fantastic that engineering definition has design in it. Our take on that in both the design and engineering perspective has always been that we are part of a complex that helps create the world we see around us, this designed and engineered world that surrounds us. And we approach that by bringing people and technology together in meaningful ways to create useful stuff and things. Stuff and things, as we look down upon the Earth from the space station, consist of all sorts of elements in terms of what we design and engineer, and some which are understood as being traditional within these disciplines, artifacts, primarily physical things, physical objects. But over the years, and as the disciplines have evolved and as society and technology have evolved, that's moved into interactions, experiences, services, information systems, intangible things. These are all part of what we do as product designers and design engineers. So then that story about experience of design and engineering, and as Ahmed discussed then, my varied background is enormously varied. I've done all sorts of things. Virtually none of them were planned. I grew up in a background, which I'll talk about a bit more, where I didn't know what a product designer was, or an industrial designer, or a design engineer, or even an engineer generally. And I definitely didn't know the more arcane job titles on there. The ones I did know were the ones that I started off doing: labouring, factory working, roofing, plumbing, carpenting. Those I knew, those I did. The rest came later. So the story. Well, bit of background. My story started off with a chopped finger. I don't know, what does that mean? Well, my curiosity and my approach to ending up eventually being involved in design and engineering was summed up when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I sneaked out of my house and there was an industrial waste tip just behind the estate we lived on. And I went over there and I wanted to make some stuff. So I found a slate off a broken roof and I sharpened the edge of that. And I started to make a spear out of a branch that I found. And I got a bit distracted. So while I was making the spear, I chopped my own finger off. But that desire to go out and explore and make things has always been there. So there's my background on the slide with the trees. That's where I come from. Strange mixture of countryside on the edge of the Brecon Beacons in a mining village. Lots of industry, or used to be lots of industry, a lot of countryside, all mixed in together. There's one of my awful haircuts when I was doing my A-levels, and that the place I come from, and a place you all come from, you know, there is where your formative experiences happen, and the formative experiences lead on to how you approach life, what you think of life, what you interweave into your life are. And the most important formative experience with me was the miners' strike in 1984. I was a teenager and I lived in a mining village, and it was, many of you might not know of the miners' strike. It was a year-long strike where the National Union of Miners took on the Tory government at the time that was looking to close down all the mines. It was a horrific period. We had soup kitchens, families without heating. The village was really struggling, but also the village pulled together. to look after one another. And something strange and remarkable happened. The Dillais and Swansea Valley Miners Support Group, the Dillais and Swansea Miners Support Group, which my mother and father were part of, and were contacted by a lesbian and gay society in London who wanted to support the miners. Even though it was a strange world, mining was still very macho, not very inclusive of different lives and different perspectives. But they went with the philosophy of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The Thatcherite government was not very positive towards gay and lesbian people either, so they came down and supported, and this wonderful community of support across the country from London down to my area built up. And a few years ago, there was a wonderful film made about this story called Pride, which I would recommend to all of you. And that ability of people to get together, to support one another and help one another and change things was fantastic in many ways. It was a tragic story in some ways because the miners lost, the mining industry was destroyed, communities were destroyed, our community was destroyed. We had 50% unemployment for years afterwards, and it was a terrible time. But a flip side of that, because of this collaboration, in 1985, London's Pride March was due to go ahead, and thousands of miners in buses turned up to walk on the Pride March to support the people who had supported them. This led to pressure on the Labour government at the time through the unions, to change their approach to the law regarding gay and lesbian people. And this led to the changing of laws in terms of support and accessibility across the country. So we had a huge positive outcome, even though it led from a negative thing, and people working together for a good cause lodged in my mind, despite the kind of tragedy in society in our local area. A bigger thing happened that was hugely positive. So that was a first bit of learning for me. And I think, for everybody, principles matter. The both groups stuck by the principles, despite there being horrible barriers in the way, but they stuck by the principles. They did what they could, and they did what they believed in, and positive change happened. So think about, what are your principles now? Establish them. Reflect upon what you think and what you believe, and establish those principles, but also keep reviewing them. They'll change, they'll evolve as you experience more and you understand more. First learning point. Second bit, pick up a bit, and then I went away eventually after doing all sorts of jobs to study. I did a BA in three-dimensional design and a PGC in technology, and there's some more bad haircuts. Although they get better down there. Look, I just cut it all off, which is probably the best way to go in retro photos. And I understood design as being craft-based and furniture-based, but I started to work with groups around that time doing participatory environmental art. I was designing things and experiences and objects, and I was sculpting things, all of which I thought was a side thing to being a furniture designer or something along that line. I didn't know at the time that the things that I thought were side issues that weren't that important, they were fun and interesting, but they weren't part of my career, actually were far more formative and far more important than what I thought I was doing. So while you're going through stuff, make sure you listen to all that around you and take it in, absorb it, learn from it. And be careful not to self-select or limit yourself. In my head, that caused me lots of difficulty for years. I was going to be a furniture or jewelry designer, and that was it. And I really couldn't see the richness of all this far more interesting and important stuff that I'd been doing, because I was stuck inside my own head at that point. Then ended up working as a technical model maker in a hospital, which was fascinating. In the maxillofacial ward, working with dental and facial injury surgeons, helping to recreate traumatized faces or badly damaged faces through work with various types of supplementary, forgotten the word, very tired. Anyway, in the maxillofacial ward. I then went on to do a master's in product design and ended up doing a final major project based around very low frequency through rock radio, and ended up going testing stuff, developing stuff down in caves. Again, had no thought about this originally. The skills I'd learned in the maxillofacial labs in terms of technical model making had built participatory out, but they all seemed like separate strands. And the next thing, I'm down in caves, trying out systems, testing systems, designing casings, designing interactive surfaces for this strange environment. Learned lots again, met lots of people, absorbed lots of things. Also learned that I really, really, really don't like caves. I'm big, and caves and big people don't go well together. And through that, the learning again was taking note of everything, document everything, interpret what you're experiencing at the time and embed it and retain it. It's easy, it'll all fly by you otherwise. If you've not got it down on paper or on screen or on a voice memo, it's very easy for it all just to disappear and you to lose the vast majority of what you've experienced. And then as you're translating it from your thoughts or from other people's voices or from other people's actions onto paper, you're sense making, you're reinterpreting it. And sense making in and of itself as a designer and engineer is of critical importance. The ability to take a big mess of stuff that's been said and done, get it down, pick out the salient points, organize it, represent it, and understand it. I also learned, and really importantly, about trying new things. This idea of furniture and jewelry was starting to fade by this point. I tried all these different things and I was starting to understand the rich possibilities, but I was also getting things wrong all the time. By trying the new things and by moving away from safety, by moving away from that which I knew, I gained new experiences, but I also made a total mess of all sorts of things. Learn something from it, mess it up, try it again, do it better. Success and failure, it depends on your perspective anyway. So being open to trying things, not stepping away from fear. Don't be fearful. It's, we all rationalize about why we don't try new things. And a lot of it comes down to fear, but it's hard to say that to yourself. I know I was struggling. I was fearful. I wanted to stay in South Wales at the time. There were all sorts of opportunities that I could have gone and taken, but I didn't. I wanted to stay in South Wales. But I've just told you, there were no jobs in South Wales. There definitely weren't any jobs around my area in industrial design or design engineering as I was starting to understand the possibilities. Along the way, at that point as well, the idea of making things real. Don't wait. It's like documenting stuff that's in your head. You can have the best ideas in the world. We've all got these amazing ideas. They're in our head. They're nothing. They don't count unless you turn things into reality. So if you've got something you want to say, something you want to write, publish it, get out there. If there's something you want to make and show people how things work, make it. In your head is nothing. Great ideas are nothing until they're made real. So don't wait. Don't wait for permission. You don't need permission from anyone. Go and do it. Don't do the minimum. Do whatever's exciting to you. Do the maximum. Push it as far as you can go, but make it real. Don't leave it waiting in your head, because the time will pass. That brilliant idea that you had 6 months down the line, 17 other people have already done it. It's out in the market, it's out in the street, it's wherever, and you go, oh, that idea I had. Do something with your ideas. So I was there. I had all these experiences. I was too fearful to leave South Wales, which I now realise in retrospect. I didn't think so at the time. I thought it was brave and exciting at the time. But I couldn't get the type of job, the career job that I was thinking about. What I didn't realise is the stuff I was doing, which you still see more of here, was a job. But there's a difference between a job and a job that can financially support you. That was the bigger struggle. So try to be creative and started to learn that you could try things. I created some jobs. I worked with some of the graduates from the master's course I'd been on to create the design agency. And look at that mid-90s rendering style that we were pulling back then. And the graphics, quite terrifying, isn't it? But we worked with some people. We got some good projects going, but we couldn't make it work financially. So making your own job is a nice, easy thing to say. And it's really easy to do. Just give yourself a job title. However, making a sustainable financial job become a career, making that support you, that's a bit easier said than done. But again, don't be afraid to try. Try things, give it a go. In amongst that, I was trying to start this job, start this design agency, continuing to do the art alert stuff, the participatory design stuff. All was fantastic in terms of personal development, professional development, apart from that financial support thing. At the time, I was also taking some courses on the side. Now, the experiences were building were really rich from my perspective, even reflected upon them. And at the time, I thought these are really interesting. But it was the courses I did and the skills that I developed on the side, if you like, were the ones that got me the jobs in the end. So this was fairly early still in the wonderful world of 3D CAD, and new systems were emerging. AutoCAD was also developing. It had been a fairly clunky thing. So AutoCAD LT came out around that time, and a bit of software called Variometrics, which is similar to, you know, the SolidWorks type of approach that we're talking about now, but there were lots of newer systems jockeying for position on the market at the time. I did a City and Guilds course, a free course for the AutoCAD, and I found Variometrics had just opened up offices in South Wales, and they were trying to get established there. So they were offering free training to those with the right sort of background. So I managed to get on one of their training courses, got that at the same time. There were some accounting and business management courses going on, Suddenly I got over my fear, decided, okay, right, I'm going to start applying for jobs outside of South Wales. I'd already worked, it says that I got some job offers. I'd done the training course with Variometrics. I'd worked with SDRC Ideas, another 3D CAD system during my master's. Sent out some job offers. I'd sent hundreds in South Wales trying to get these permanent jobs, nothing. Got lots of job offers from the southeast of England. And the job offers primarily I got because I was skilled in Variometrics and SDRC Ideas. The fact I had in my own mind all these rich experiences, all this creativity to offer, that was great. They wanted that. But the thing that got the job was the skill. So build your skills. Engineers, designers at this point, keep practicing your skills. As an example here, you know, if you're using SolidWorks now, which I know many of you are, make sure you're expert at it. For graduate level employment, having great skills is the main thing that's going to get you the jobs you want. You build off that. So practice your skills and take advantage of any courses or free things you can do on the side as well. Okay, I then went to work in my area that it became, or the area that I now lecture in, although things have changed a lot since then, in the world of industrial design and design engineering. I was in a relatively small number, well, to begin with, a couple of different small, medium companies, 50 odd people, and then also working with enormous global companies like LG and ABB with tens of thousands of people. But starting with the smaller companies, that meant you got to do lots of different roles. I could be an industrial designer, a project engineer, a production engineer, and a design engineer all at the same time, depending what role I was taking. Bit of a secret behind these different titles that people often think of are hugely far apart. There's so much slop and grey overlap in certain sectors that it's hard to differentiate. It often depends on the company and what they want to call the roles. And there I went through, a wonderful experience working across right from concept. Hold on, went the wrong way. Went too far. That terrible colored render at the top, which took 2 days rendering back then of an RCD unit concept, right at the start. Concept development for new technologies, through the Corel Draw renders down the bottom, industrial design concepts, visual concepts, interaction concepts, through in the middle, layouts for an automated assembly plant, working with LG and a company down in Wales to design and set up the full production line, but it to be automated or partially automated, and how that would work. Then up the top right, the definition in that company, at least, of design engineering, lots of detailed design, optimization, analysis, and then development of drawing packs and production packs, etc. From that came lots of products, and it's quite sweet to see that 20 years on, some of the products, including the internal technology that I developed and the external casings, are still on the market. Really interesting. I said I developed there, which is not true. We developed. There's more about collaboration coming up now, but that's another thing to realize, the focus on self and ego and individualism. You work with other people in this world. You don't work on your own. So learn to collaborate now. Get past that thing of seeing yourself doing a degree individually, and really make the most of enriching your experience by fully working with those around you, with your peers, with the staff, with people outside of the university. Find those interesting people, connect with them, work with them. And in that way, you get to do things that are far beyond your individual capabilities. Push yourself out of that safe little cocoon of individualism, and things get much more interesting. And in terms of making things interesting for yourself, challenge yourself, continue to challenge yourself. Got a picture of Bournemouth University. Ahmed talked about Bournemouth University. I was doing all that stuff. I'd been there for a good number of years. And the next step was towards design and engineering management. And I just really didn't fancy design and engineering management, because within the sector I was working, that was mostly about spreadsheets. And I still have a terror of spreadsheets even now. So having that as the focus of my career at that point didn't seem exciting. So I thought I'd go and try something different. And I saw an advert for a lecturer in Bournemouth University. So I applied for it. I hadn't done any lecturing. I'd never been to Bournemouth before, but it was by the beach and that sounded quite nice. I just went. I thought I'd go along for the experience. It'd be an interesting experience going down there, seeing what it's all about, how the recruitment process takes place, and I could learn from it. Not expecting to get the job, but I got the job. So I moved, changed the career pathway, changed the place I lived, tried something new. Great. Worked there for a few years. Beach was fabulous. Learned loads from lecturing, because it's that interpretation and translation and communication of concepts again. Understanding them as you're doing them is one thing. Trying to communicate them to other people is an entirely different thing, and you find yourself digging more deeply and changing perspective and adding perspectives and adding references to come in to try and ensure that your understanding is properly communicated. So you learn more about the things you thought you already knew lots about, and about the things you thought you knew nothing about. From there, the importance of empathizing and feeling, understanding other people, understanding the meaning, the emotional meaning of everything you do became ever more apparent to me as I was teaching, as I was trying to explain what was important in design and engineering. That became ever more prominent in my mind. And it also then reminded me via my personal experiences. I moved from Bournemouth to London, not on some big strategic career-based, cleverly worked out plan, but because I met somebody I fell in love with on the anti-war march in 2013. 2003. And thought, well, we're going to be together. I shall move to London. I'll try and get a job. And I got a job in Middlesex University, which was fantastic. Worked out well. It was a bit of a gamble. It hadn't been intended, but that worked out really well for me. I've been very, very lucky. Oh, there's a subtext to all of this. Don't underestimate luck. Anybody who tells you everything was planned and carefully considered and nothing to do with luck is either lying or, well, either lying to you or to themselves. There's so much luck involved in everything that we do. That's a little side one. That's the subtext to each and every slide. But in that trying to understand and embracing experiences and other perspectives, just a little reminder to you all to read stuff. Please read stuff. Not just your textbooks. Read fiction. Fiction is fabulous. You can live a world of other people's experiences without ever leaving your room. Fantastic. You can travel. You can imagine things you couldn't possibly have imagined. You can see perspectives you couldn't possibly have from your singular place. So empathize, feel, read. Then Middlesex University. Ahmed said, I've been here a long time. I wouldn't know where to start. It's been fantastic. There's all this stuff we've done. We continue to do it. It's a cracking place, brilliant colleagues, fantastic students, always a joy. And within the teaching that I've done here, I've also gone on a bit of it's going to go X Factor. I've also gone on a bit of a journey beyond the teaching, alongside the teaching. So as Ahmed said, I was with Andy and Kate starting up Red Loop, helping out them starting up Red Loop and working with Red Loop for a few years. Then I was doing kind of participatory action research with a project called Walkali, working out in with informal economy workers in Nairobi and South Sudan. And that led on to a project called Fuel from Waste, working with same groups and more, looking at developing sustainable intermediate fuel technology for the communities who live in what are often called slums around Nairobi and other parts of Kenya and South Sudan. All part of the work in Middlesex University that runs alongside, parallels with, and interweaves with the work we do on the course. That leads on to another kind of tactical thing for you to do. There's all these people that I've worked with, students have worked with, the people on the projects have worked with. Build your network. The collaboration thing, keeping in touch with people, connecting with people. You need that network to do that. And the network is also part of your kind of tactical way through the working world. Some people try and represent the society we live in as a meritocracy. It's not in any way. It's full of difficulties and prejudice and discrimination and privilege. And one of the ways you can navigate it and stop the worst negative aspects and work your way through is to build a network. And know people and help one another, and keep connected with them. More stuff we've done at Middlesex University, again, projects outside, and more changes to my job and my understanding of design and engineering. The top one was working with a group of artists and writers and wonderful colleagues from the university and students from the university as part of a project to take the Royal Observatory in Greenwich and turn it into a fictional version of itself for a year. And absolutely fascinating. One of the major things we did there was a large-scale interactive installation, which you can see there, which replicated from this fictional story of the flipped Royal Observatory, a crashed steampunk time machine, of course. Down below that, hey, we got Chris Brennan here, haven't we, Chris? Hello, Chris. Working on a speculative design project with artist Dominic Wilcox and with Harry and Chris and Spike and Colin and lots of other people contributing, developing the idea of a stained glass car of the future. Those of you who are into automotive design will snigger at this point, I hope. That being the point, it's looking at cars in 2060, and it's a thought experiment saying, okay, so if we no longer have the requirements for safety and control that we think of as a car, what does a car become? It becomes an experience, and a ridiculous experience in our current framing of what a car is all about would be the idea of this stained glass dome, dangerous, impractical, but this moves the conversation on. It comes back to making things real again. Actually make a stained glass car and you provoke a far richer conversation around our future and the direction of our future than you would by just saying a stained glass car or drawing a stained glass car. So this kind of building experience stuff is starting to come all together, built it up over years, lots of unexpected pathways, lots of learning, lots of luck, lots of things. So at some point, and constantly actually, you've always got to bring together all of your experience. Sometimes the way forward seems clear, sometimes things are positive, sometimes they're negative, sometimes they drive you almost into despair. Don't panic, keep being optimistic, because things move on, opportunities emerge. Sometimes you've got to be patient, and sometimes you just got to keep doing things. And through keeping doing things, the big project I've been working on since 2013, as Ahmed said, officially launched in terms of events and things in 2015, a couple of years of work designing, first of all, the SMASHfestUK. And this came about from asking questions. We through that museums project and various other things, been working with lots of museums and festivals that talked about their frustration because they struggle to attract people outside of their standard audiences. They had trouble with gender, ethnic, socioeconomic diversity. They couldn't get people to come beyond their usual, as they would define it, audiences. And there was lots of despair and lots of worry and lots of good intention, panicking, but not actually thinking about it as designers would. Say, okay, so let's start to work this through and start to understand what's going on and how things could be made better through a co-design approach. Now, co-design approach, there are lots of methodologies for co-design. Co-design, I'll talk about for a while and through this project and some other people's view in it, is about the idea that there isn't some solo genius or solo company genius design or engineering group that has all the answers. It's about working with people who are going to use or experience the things you're designing and engineering to work out what they want, what they would propose, what's meaningful to them, what they need. The "they" is a bad phrase there, but what people need. And how you do that and how you think about that is something to consider with everything that you do. There's a tendency at the moment to consider co-design as a separate discipline. Ezio Manzini, one of the kind of great modern design theorists, his take on this is all design is co-design. So everything should and has to involve the creators and users as one group, not as separate groups or people. So we started to ask the questions of who, how, what, where, when, in terms of this engagement of changing the landscape of approaching things. I use a top level approach similar to the one I use at Middlesex: understand, create, implement, evaluate, round and round, iterate that. Active prototyping, get out, work with people, understand people, get their ideas, get their perspectives first of all, and create things and try them out and then make them better. So I was the co-founder of this. I'm a co-director, and within my design role, I work as a designer, an engineer, a facilitator, a trainer, doing again roles that I didn't expect I'd ever be doing, with groups of people across London, based often in Southeast London, but we've worked in North, Northwest, across the UK, in Bradford, in Gloucester, in Neath, and various other places, with students, with schools, with the public, with adults, with children. And lots of students. There's lots of our students and staff. Look, there's Alex and Ahmed there. And groups of final year students in amongst that, thinking about bringing their creativity to bear on what are often referred to as wicked problems, complex problems, big, seemingly intractable social issues. But you can still think of them in the same way as you think of designing a singular artifact, if you think in the right way, in a co-design approach. If you want to know more about the whole genesis of that, I think Ahmed's going to send out some links to paper we published recently, which gives a breakdown that's more detail about the process and the sequence we went through. But the key things about listening, people, places, inside stories, and a process to develop things. And critical within that is who is whatever you're designing or engineering for, and then who should it be for? Inexperienced designers and engineers approach this from it's for themselves. Hopefully by this point in your university education, you've got past that narrow definition of who you're designing and engineering for. But you can broaden that out again, driven by business and market sectors and narrow definitions of personas or market areas. You've got broader responsibilities. We're going to build towards that. There are ramifications for everything you do, for the people who you might be designing for or should be designing for and with, but are often designing at, through to societal, environmental implications and unintended consequences of not stopping to think through what you're doing before you start doing it, rather than just moving through a singular development process that might be efficient in turning out a thing that seems to work, but the broader meaning of it working well is lost and not considered ever. So our particular approach in this particular area, through that co-creation, co-design, co-production method, led to all sorts of interesting outputs. A new model, a new approach for co-design in public engagement. Again, in the papers, you can read all about that. I'd take up the full hour just explaining it if I went into that. But also, over 100 physical and digital products, events, shows, experience systems, 100,000 plus people taking part, a requirement for there to be zombies in everything. Not our choice, but co-design. Lots of stories, lots of things, lots of events, and loads of active people with ownership of stuff, not passive consumers, but active creators. And that handing over of ownership in creation and facilitating creative input from others, critical in creating these meaningful things. Lots of nice awards because of that. Ahmed talked about those earlier. A slight further detail on the process, so that understand, create, implement, evaluate, approach, lodge that in your head. Keep it's what we teach you anyway. Understand it deeply, but don't then just stay passive. Try things out, create things, make them real, try them out, test them, work with people, see how they work, then do it again better. Feed that into your knowledge. Sometimes it comes out right first time if you've understood things fully. Often it doesn't. That's a slightly more kind of academic representation of that co-creation cycle that we've gone through. It's a weird thing. It's a co-creation cycle that's also a research cycle. So it's both an activist project and a research project. So it's kind of, these two things are talking to themselves, trying to understand, so what are we doing? How can we generalize what we do so that we can share that with other people so they can try doing it as well as what are we doing? We're creating these things so people can take part in them, and we're creating them with them so that they have ownership of them. So it's all tangled together. And if you're doing that, you need to think about how people come together. So coming back to that collaboration thing about the team you're working with, you're collaborating, the people you're working with, thinking about expertise, who's needed, what's needed, how you manage that. That's so important to your development. I know, you know, when we work with you with team projects, they can be a bit of a pain because you didn't get to choose the team, you didn't get to choose the people you wanted to work with. You never do. You don't get to choose the employees you're working with in a company, but you still have to understand how to be part of that team in a positive way and how to manage the experience for yourself and for others, and to be greater than the sum of the parts. And gaining more experiences and being open-minded and positive towards that are critical. So through that development, Ahmed talked about, I realize I haven't talked much about the current project, Space Plague. The current project with Space Plague looked at immersive theatre and transformative effects. There's a research area called narrative transportation, how stories, when people are fully immersed in them, actually change not just their knowledge and their learning, but their attitudes and behaviors and beliefs. Very, very powerful narrative transportation, and very rarely used for positive things. You could guess probably who the sectors are that have used narrative transportation. And the final years, we'll know this from the talks we've had about Space Plague. Advertising and marketing, they'll tell you stories that'll change your attitudes and beliefs and make you buy stuff. Lots of stuff you don't need. They'll make you so emotionally attached to cars, you will talk about cars as something you have a right to drive, rather than it being a dangerous piece of machinery that you're licensed to drive. And your dreams and your ego and your self-esteem will be associated with these things that through narrative transportation in advertising, they've created in your head. So we're exploring how to create beneficial effects through narrative transportation. And we've gone through live immersive theatre events, multi-part interactive, almost escape room type events. And we finally got, due to COVID constraints initially, but also because we want to explore that, a fully digital VR experience, which is launched this week. So if you go to the SMASHfest website and you do happen to have VR kit, Oculus VR kit, you can have a play and feedback to us, because this is the first cycle of prototyping with that. I'm running out of time, I better pick up. Did we have the expertise to design in virtual reality? Did we have the expertise to design immersive theatre experiences? No, not to begin with. But we worked with the right people and we learned. So uncertainty, being comfortable, trying things, going back to the earlier point, it's really important, because otherwise you'll self-limit again and you'll lock yourself in a prison of your own making. That one talks more about narrative transportation. Again, Ahmed will send you the link, I think. And then to do with that uncertainty, something that I have to keep reminding myself, especially as I'm becoming middle-aged, or as I became middle-aged. What am I becoming middle-aged? I became middle-aged ages ago. about change. Everything changes all the time. And we resist it often. Human nature often resists change. You can't. Everything's changing. You're changing second by second. You're getting older. The world is changing all the time. So embrace it. Don't shout at the waves coming in on the beach. Learn to surf. Keep that open and curious mind. I keep reminding myself of why I chopped off my finger, and I must keep like that and go and play in the industrial waste pit, metaphorically, and try things out. So the possibilities, the opportunities, the imperatives, hopefully some of them are coming through just from those reflections. And again, from the SMASHfestUK and co-design. The imperatives I really want you to think about is, who is your design and engineering for, or with, or by? What are you trying to achieve and why? You've got to keep asking these questions. Your inner world, and you'll be entering a professional world with huge, possibly apocalyptic challenges. You can't hide from them, but you can approach them and think about your responsibilities and the possibilities, the positive possibilities to do things within that. And you can think of your own story, your own narrative. You can be the hero in that story, in everybody else's story, if you're thinking about the points that matter, the things that matter, the power that you have. There's Manzini's co-design thing. That power that you have is probably larger than you realize. And therefore, a challenge to all designers, all engineers, whatever you do, whenever you start or generate or instigate an interesting new brief project technical challenge, make sure you stop and ask those questions. What am I trying to achieve here? Who is this for? What effects are it going to have? What are its broader implications for the planet, for real people around it, not users or customers? Also on yourself. You are not powerless. You have these choices. And you need to make these choices in an informed manner. So coming to the end of the story, you're not powerless. Your choices matter. These things matter. These are mine. These are the things that I've summarized from my experience. Some of them, most of them, I would say, are generalizable and should have some resonance with you and should reflect somewhat on your own experiences, but build your own. Work your way through. Be a reflective practitioner, as is often called. Think about what you're doing, reflect upon it, map it, model it, develop yourself from it. Don't just plunge through blithely, never stopping to think. And I think, it's imperative in terms of practice that those co-design basics that we're talking about there, just about understanding people, not ever separating people from a technical challenge, because the only reason we do things is for people, or it should be the only reason we do things. So understand the people that you're working with and for. Trying things out, not foisting assumptions upon people. Continue to try them out with people and for people, and asking all the time, what is the story of this that we're creating? What is it that we are trying to achieve, that we should be trying to achieve? And who is this for, and why are we doing it? Keep asking it again and again, all the time. We're at a place in time with those difficulties from earlier. James Tooze at the RCA, an established designer, reflects upon this, that we cannot any longer continue along the pathway that we've created in terms of economy, in terms of production, in terms of consumption. Things have to change. And as designers and engineers, we can be part of that recreation of the system as well as the things, redesigning everything. And the start of that is honest, rich, and insightful reflection around the issues and the approaches and the practices that we carry on day by day. And then you can go on a journey. You can go through your own story. This is the classic hero's journey. Some psychologists and narratologists will claim there's only one story in the world, and it's this. You start off somewhere, you go through all sorts of things, you metaphorically die or go through an ordeal, you learn from that, you're reborn, you go back to the start, and off you go again. That's my journey there, through many, many cycles, except without the heroic bit, just the personal journey. I find myself looking at this and understanding more and more. This is how we recreate ourselves again and again and again. And that's where the story ends. Sorry, I pressed the button too soon. And at the end of the story, I will leave you with two things to think about that have nothing really to do with design or engineering. But there was one quote from the Hopi people's spider grandmother goddess that I remember when I was a kid, and I tried to lodge it in my head. Don't go around hurting each other, try to understand things. Not sure I've always achieved both of those things, but it's a good one to hold in the head. And then finally, from a pop record of a couple of decades ago, Wear Sunscreen. The final bit of the not necessarily trustworthy narrator. Be careful whose advice you buy. Advice is a form of nostalgia. Dispensing is a way of fishing the past from the disposal, wiping it off, painting over the ugly parts, and recycling it for more than it's worth. That's also called reflection, nostalgia and reflection. However, if you do reflect, and you honestly reflect, and you then incorporate that into your thinking, you're not painting it, you're not recycling for more than it's worth, you're actually using it in the way that it should be used. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Thanks a lot, Win, for the really interesting lecture. It covers your story, your background, your beginnings, and your journey throughout academia, your interests and your experience as well. Like, there's really nice that and stories and the hairstyles throughout, alongside all of the lessons and learnings that were embedded there as well and intertwined throughout that. So thanks a lot. And just before we get to the questions, just another shout out to another graduate and alumni who's joined the talk today, Nihal from 2016. So thanks for joining, Nihal. And for all of you guys, you know, when these guest lectures come out, feel free to share those with your colleagues and friends and associates, people who are on the course and people who have graduated as well. So guys, feel free to continue to gather your thoughts, questions and comments in the chat. And as usual, if you want to go live and interact with Win with your questions, sentiments, thoughts and provocative statements, whatever, feel free to you know, just put a request in there. First and foremost, so we'll start off with Navpreet, who seconds the hairstyles, the comment that I made earlier. She said, "Nice mullet there, Win," in your very first picture.
One day, I am hoping that the mullet will come back while I still have enough hair to grow one. I've been hoping, and occasionally it's resurfaced in country and western areas in America, but in the UK, I still haven't had the chance to get my mullet back, and I do miss it. Love a good mullet.
A question.
I was a good old punk and heavy metal boy back then, so my mullet was very important.
A question from Tom Millward. So what's been your favorite project to date?
Space Plague. That's a kind of trite answer in some ways, but it's also a general answer. It's always the one you're working on at the time. You know, it's the thing that excites you, that you're doing at the time, and then you look back, and there's some of them that you thought that were really important at the time that turn out in retrospect not to be that important or that exciting in memory, and then others that you underestimated. But I think, you know, it's always the current one that's the most exciting for me. It's the new thing, the curiosity. I've got to go and chop my finger off again.
Amazing. And Adam's asking now, what's a skill that you're desperate to learn next?
Unreal Engine. So Unreal Engine is for film and visualization and VR. You know, you create, it's essentially like 3D CAD is the closest thing for creating the worlds in which we're operating at the moment. So I've been scratching at the surface and working with experts, but I'd really like to be able to spend some time learning that. In my mind, this is probably self-delusion. It should come relatively easily because it's say that the mechanisms and the way of thinking and the interfaces you work with are kind of like CAD and rendering systems. So I've got this, from my scratch at the surface, that it should only take me 13 or 14 years to get moderately good at it.
That's brilliant. And Luigi asked a question. So what has been the biggest lesson you have learned so far throughout your career?
Well, there's all of those ones there, Luigi, I suppose. But I think the thing that sticks with me, that I try and remind myself all the time, and that kind of is the capstone to the rest, is about trying to understand things. Just constantly, not making assumptions, stepping outside and trying to understand more in both an emotional way and a technical way, but just always trying to understand and learning from that understanding.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And Brady, feel free to unmute yourself and go live, Brady.
Awesome. Thanks, Ahmed. Cheers for the talk, Win. Really appreciated it. It's good stuff. You talked a lot. You mentioned in your talk, and we've heard you say often, document everything and take that and reflect and become reflective practitioners. Do you have a recommendation to how to develop a good reflective practice in terms of, if you're gathering a bunch of things, do you have any recommendations for how to regularly or meaningfully reflect back in a way that you can continue to build that in, rather than just having a bunch of assets or just, memories that then are just there, not being used really?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, that, because I wouldn't quite say cupboards full, but shelves full of old notebooks. So there are two things really. I think there's just look after the stuff. Make sure there's, it's there, because I do find myself going back and digging out an old notebook and a thing that I was thinking about and being able to reference it. But it's a bit like digital photographs these days. We take so many photographs. It's fantastic. I got a photograph of everything. I took 400 photographs today, and now I've got 65,000 photographs. And I never look at them. They're all on my iCloud. And of course, and if I do try and find something, it's lost in there. So in the same way as with your digital photographs, I still find for that which I really value, before I lose track of them, I make them real. Coming back to one of my other points. So I'll print a photo album of a holiday we went on. So it's there and accessible, and I've made choices about it. So in terms of your practice, and as a reflective practitioner, making the things that are important real, either embedding them in a project you're doing and being explicit about that. So you're referring back to the previous learning, and it's explicit in your project. So the things that you create are constant refreshers of the things that you've learned. So that's one way. Or in the flip side of that, publishing things about it, writing things. You want to go and write an academic paper. As undergraduates, you can do it, reflect upon your practice, go to a conference, go to a small meeting. But actually, yeah, it's about that. It's extracting the things that are meaningful, making them real, and applying them and embedding them in things as you go.
Right.
But also keep it all. Keep it all.
Right. Awesome. Cheers. Thanks.
This is why they wouldn't let me and Alex have an office together anymore, because of the keep it all philosophy.
When you have to tunnel to get to your desk, you've reached the limit.
A brilliant question, brilliant answer as well. And Tom Millward, he asked, do you remember a specific experience where you'd wish that you'd done something differently? And if you were to do it over, what would you change?
Oh, God, yeah, loads. What would be a useful one? I'm having... overwhelmed with choice and this kind of swirling thing. Actually, right, one that jumps out, right, starting out with Power Breaker. So that first industrial design engineering job. And I got there, and it was the variometrics and the SDRC ideas, CAD guru and all of this. I could do all of this stuff. And they got me the place, and they wanted me to design and make a test rig, a jig for testing buttons. Now, Andy and I were talking with the final years about this the other day about, you know, testing things and certification. And you'll have certification. There was an electrical control button, and this had to be certified that you could press it 50,000 times and it wouldn't fail. So as a technology company, you're not going to employ somebody to sit there and count these, are you? So you build little rigs and you build little test rigs to do this. And I was put onto this, and I look back now and I realized, you know, they wanted me to understand the requirements of what I was doing, the outcomes of what I was doing, some of the less glamorous, even though, you know, it wasn't a glamorous area anyway, things that need to be done and, you know, are interesting and exciting. And I remember being really off about this. I didn't think, you know, this was what I wanted to do, and I don't think I made a particularly good job of it, because I was in a bit of a humph about it. And now I look back and I think that was a brilliant thing to be given as a new person in that company, to properly understand, and a really interesting, you know, it wasn't some vast, complex technical challenge, but an achievable, manageable, but challenging technical challenge for me as a new person there. And it was really well framed. And I did a terrible job of it. And the technical model maker who worked there had to come and rescue my butt and make it actually work, because I did similar things afterwards, which I managed okay. So I don't think it was because I couldn't do it if I applied myself. It was just because I had a stinking attitude to it, and I wasted an opportunity. And then loads of other times like that, Tom. When you can't see the opportunity because for some reason you've got something else in your head and you end up having a really bad attitude towards it, and it's only in retrospect you look back and go, oh, now if I'd approached that positively, one, I'd have enjoyed myself much more. Two, I'd have learned much faster. And three, I wouldn't have been, oh, we're on recording, can I swear? I wouldn't have been an arse. And that would have been a good thing. On every level, that would have been good. But yeah, that one really sticks out. Because I was acting like a sulky teenager.
Great question there, Tom. Great question. And there's opportunities to learn and reflect on everything. There's opportunities, you know,
Yeah.
positive opportunities in anything you do, and it's all about how you take it, how you perceive it, and how you take it forward and actually apply yourself with a positive attitude. And Tom, Navpri, a superb question here. How did you get involved with Joie Kali?
You know, and recreate, because it was complicated by doing things. We were doing an exhibition down in the Truman Brewery, and by talking to people. So we had the exhibition up, and we had some interesting things looking at sustainability. And I was there, and I was talking to people who came to visit the exhibition. So student work and some of the stuff you know, that we'd been doing as well. And somebody came round, and the students were doing their kind of shuffling around, not talking to them. So I went over to talk to them, and they were like, blah, blah, blah. We got talking about this, and they were from an NGO that was working in that sector at the time. So I got talking to them, and I was being interested. So I asked them lots of questions about what they were doing, and was really interested in what they did, how they did it, and things like this. So we ended up having a conversation, and I was, and I guess the thing I said earlier about generosity, I was just like, okay, I was suggesting some ideas off the top of my head as we bounced this conversation around. And they said, oh, we'd really love to talk some more, you know, can we get your email address? And we got talking, and they were sent up a project, and the British Council were funding projects at the time. So we got together, got in touch with the British Council, applied for funding, and got it from there. But yeah, being interested in people comes back to that again, and listening to people again. It was because I stopped to talk to them and listened to what they were saying, and was interested in what they were saying. I had a conversation with them, and things came from there.
Amazing. And I
luck,
think
luck in many ways, but you can you can make yourself a bit luckier than you would be otherwise by your attitude and how you approach things.
100%. I was also going to say that as well. It comes back to the luck that you mentioned earlier. It's all about being active in your interactions and that spontaneous kind of nature where things happen and fall into place if you're there and you're doing things and you're, again, positivity and being active rather than passive. Another question there from Navpreet. Navpreet, you're on a roll today. How do you become an asset of your local community and get involved?
So I missed that. I was trying to read at the same time, and I can't do two things at once. We'll say that. Tell you again, Ahmed.
How do you become an asset of your local community and get involved?
That comes. I guess it's the same thing as well. Being active, go and find out what's going on, and go and talk to people who are already doing things. Not in the obvious things. So go to the places where people don't go. That's a really interesting lesson that I learned from SMASHfest, and that in the paper about neglected communities that we've recently written, the heartbreaking and striking quote that drove where we went to work and who we went to work with was based on a similar phrase we heard again: nobody ever comes here. No one ever comes here. Why would you come here? And then specifically when we went to do the Colindale project, we went to speak to the local community centre, we went to speak to shopkeepers, we went to speak to one of the residents associations. So those sorts of groups are a good way to start speaking now, residents associations in areas. You can also do kind of secondary research in terms of demographics and indicators of look for multiple indications of deprivation. And therefore you can see communities that don't usually have the help that they should have. But anyway, you can go in there and have these conversations, talk to people and listen to what they say. And sometimes do the opposite. So as I say, you incorporate everything and it's positive normally. But the thing that spurred us on in Colindale, we spoke to this one person who said, oh, Colindale's got loads of areas that never has any cultural or scientific or any type of events. So, there's loads of places you could go, but don't go to the Graham Park estate. Too dangerous there, they said. So we knew exactly where we needed to go from there on in. We had a few more conversations that said, don't go to the Graham Park estate. So we went and set up an event right in the middle of the Graham Park estate. But working with, not being arrogant and turning up all these random people there, sort of working with the Residents Association and the community groups and the local schools so that you built up a relationship. But yeah, find out the nodes, who's operating in the area already, go talk to them, build up a relationship with them, and then work out from there what could be done.
Thanks, Nav. Great question. And the question,
great questions all over, folks.
Exactly, and a lot of them as well. That's brilliant. So Harry Miller Adams asks, what one piece of advice do you wish you knew when you started off in the product design, or when you started off learning about product design?
I've got sorry, Harry, that just took me back. I was talking about this. I've got a group of friends from the three-dimensional design course that I took 30 odd years ago, and we've stayed great friends ever since. We speak to each other once a week. There's about 10 of us, and we were having a conversation. So the comedy answer to this the other day was, I remember I'd been working as a builder and a builder's mate and a labourer and working on building sites, and I worked for a few years before I went to college. And I went to our first graphics session, and CAD, the only CAD we had then, the equivalent of AutoCAD was just starting to come out. So everything was hand drawn, hand colored. I won't use the actual word. And so the tutor stood at the front and said, today we're gonna start with the fundamentals of rendering. And I sat there utterly nonplussed and perplexed. And the confusion kind of totally blanked me out for the whole session because I couldn't quite get over it. And he took a while to explain what he meant. Because in the building trade, rendering is plastering, concrete plastering. So it's like, I've gone to college, I'm going to learn about design, why are we doing plastering? I've been doing plastering for a couple of years, and it totally freaked me out. So I wish I'd known what rendering was right at the start, so I didn't end up freaked out for the next probably 30 years. Wish I knew when I started product design, learning product design. I think it does come back to that same thing and that same complex of things. It's not one thing really, but starting with the trying to understand things, and then opening my mind to learn beyond what I thought I already knew. You know, young and the confidence of the young, while mixed up with the insecurity of the young at the same time. You know, I struggled all the time about the new things that I was learning. The rendering one is a comic example, but it's like this thing was in my head, and detaching myself from it and opening myself up to really learn and listen was really hard. So it wasn't about the specifics of product design. Specifics will come. In terms of all the specifics that you have about product design, design engineering, you need to spend time on them, and you need to listen to the people with the expertise who already have it, so it's easier for you to learn them. And then you've got to practice stuff. You know, that's the other one that I wish I'd known, you know, about practice. It doesn't, you know, just go, yeah, I get that, and then assuming it'll all be fine was a key thing that it took a long time to learn. And I still, you know, I'm still wrestling with that to get the proper dedication to practice. But opening the mind to learn new things, not assuming that I already knew enough, and then being willing to listen and practice putting into application what I've heard. Those are the things I wish I'd known when starting to learn about product design. The specifics would have been so much easier if I'd got through those barriers. And then the understand things and the people things, in terms of specifics, would also have been really helpful, that it's all about other people. It's not about you. And I think that, to understand those people.
And I think that leads on really nicely to the last and final question. A little shameless plug there by the director of the Enactus Society. So he says, do you recommend designers and engineers get involved in activism and community project works and groups such as the Enactus Society?
Yes and no. No, the second bit's a joke. Yes, of course. Given everything I've just said there, the likelihood of me saying no, don't get involved in community or activism is kind of small, isn't it? But I think it's beyond important. It's critical, because if you stay in a little bubble of technical challenge, you don't become a good designer, you don't become a good engineer, and your development as a person is stunted. There's a big world out there beyond yourself, and contributing to that and learning from that and being part of that is how you should approach life, leave alone design and engineering. And the Enactus Society is one aspect of that. So yeah, get involved with anything and everything you can. It's always interesting, those who are involved. It's not always interesting, often interesting, that those who are involved with things that are seemingly outside of their direct studies are the ones who are most successful in their direct studies as well.
Awesome. No,
so about 14 different yeses for that to that answer, that question.
That's brilliant. And to conclude, I think Ilishka's posted a sentiment and a comment rather than a question. And I think is on behalf of Ilishka, and I'm sure many of the others share the same sentiments as well. So it's thanking you, Win, for a very inspiring talk, very useful thoughts and stories. And Ilishka says, I think everyone from us, amongst us, will apply this into our lives in order to achieve our goals. So thanks for all of the positivity, the encouragement and the energy you give us all the time, and they really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ilishka. That's I'm sorry, embarrassed, but thank you. That's such a lovely thing to say. The only thing I would say, if you're going to take inspiration, please don't take inspiration from the haircuts.
So Win, thanks again for the talk and the Q&As this evening. It was a brilliant talk. For all of you guys, details of the talk and Win were sent to your emails ahead of the talk, including links to Win's LinkedIn, his Twitter and websites as well. So definitely feel free to browse and connect. And I'll also be posting the publications and the academic papers in the Notion central page as well. For all students, staff, alumni, participants, we really look forward to seeing you all again next week. So keep an eye on your emails for the details of the speaker and the links to the talk. And until next time, stay well, stay safe, and thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.